Good afternoon. I'm Kay Reed, the Executive Director of the Dibble Institute, and I'm pleased to welcome you all here to the February 2025 webinar. We've been doing these for over 12 years, and so you are one of our many people who've enjoyed the benefits of coming to a webinar even before the pandemic. We were doing this a long time. So I'm super excited today because we have guests from Pro Youth and Families and Queens of Eve to talk to us about retention and recruitment of participants, which I think for lots of us who extend ourselves beyond our own organization to recruit and retain young people can be quite a challenge and a puzzle. So it's good to have these experts with us today who have lived experience. So let me give you a little bit of housekeeping. Kim, the next slide, please. And by the way, Kim is our engineer. She's in the background. You won't hear her or see her, but she's there and she's essential. So thank you, Kim. So if you can't hear me, and so if you can't hear me, I hope you're reading this slide. Most likely, sad to say, it's on your end. So if you can't hear us, exit and call in on, or just close your, close the sound on your computer, call in on your phone, or you might exit an entrance, but that usually solves most audio problems. I would like you, now we're going to have a little test. Can you locate the hand on your control panel? Little quiz here, not really a quiz, but I'd like to know how many of you people are brand spanking new to a Dibble webinar. This is your very, very first webinar. I haven't, over 12 years. This is it. Oh my gosh. Well, that's great. It looks like about 80% of you are returning. So welcome back to you. And about 20% of you are new. And so a special big welcome to you. So we hope you enjoy this, and it will be archived along with the slides and any handouts we hand out so that you can review it again or share it with others on your team. So thank you very much for that. Really glad to have you here. So our founders are Charlie and Helen Dibble. That's how we got the name Dibble Institute. And Charlie was really concerned about young people and their relational lives and how they weren't having hope that they could get and sustain long-term relationships. And he was also noticing in his young friends how over time they often, their lives would change, their trajectories would change if their parents' relationships were in disarray. And so he thought, this was in the late 80s, early 90s, that this was a problem he could tackle. He was on this. And because he was an engineer and had patents in his life, was busy solving problems. And so this was just one more problem he thought he'd solve. And that would be how to teach young people how to be smart about their love lives. So he interviewed the researchers of the day on what they knew about healthy relationships. The whole field of marriage counseling or marriage education was just coming into the fore, and they could go on and on about their theories of change and how to work with adults. But when he asked them, how do you reach young people, they would just shrug their shoulders and say, that's way too hard. And so Charlie said, great, I'm on it. So Kim, next slide. So that started this on the trajectory of the Dibble Institute. We started, I used to do everything in my garage, and I used to have the 800 number here, and I would, fulfill orders. And now we're a staff of 13 plus a few wonderful contract trainers that service people all around the country. We have clients in all states, in all kinds of it's used in liberal areas and conservative areas and everything in between. We're a national independent nonprofit. And last year we reached 2 years ago, 126,000. This year it was down to about 115,000. So we're counting on you guys to help us get up, because we are not the direct service providers, it's you. And so we're so grateful to all the good work you do to make that happen. Alrighty, next slide. So our mission is just really laser focused. We're helping young people gain the tools they need to successfully manage their intimate relationships. So even though our mission is really focused, the good news is when you teach these young people these skills, and I'm sure those of you who use Dibble materials will notice this, you impact sexual activity, you impact violence, you impact mental health, you impact college completion. I mean, there's so many other benefits to teaching relationship education, but the really wonderful thing in terms of recruitment and retention, and perhaps Taylor and her crew will address this, is if you talk to young people about their love lives. Oh my gosh, my love life? Oh, of course I'm fascinated. And so we've had places where they put the relationships skills classes on Fridays when kids would normally skip school because they want kids to come. So it's engaging content with meaningful and far-ranging impacts. So again, thank you for being on our team. So Kim's, thank you, Kim. So we believe in research. We're big fans of research. Charlie started us on this path, and that means everything that we put in our materials has a basis in some kind of study or fact or knowledge. And it also means that, like science is never settled, that things change. And, do I take vitamin C? Do I not take vitamin C? There's always studies. So we're always looking for study opportunities, and we like to keep our materials up to date, and we like to have them studied. And so you can have confidence that what you're teaching kids is really going to be effective. Alrighty, next slide. We're also big fans of stable, safe, and nurturing families. And the research shows, back to research, that while I'm a big fan of marriage, legal marriage, for sure, 100%, but the research shows that if a couple creates a safe, stable, and nurturing home, it's as protective as a safe, stable, nurturing married home, and vice versa. If you have an unstable, unsafe, unnurturing married home, it's just as bad as having so it's really about creating the space for kids to be safe and flourish. And it's easier to do that when you're married, but it's not exclusive. Next slide, please. And so we also believe that relationship education is for everyone. For us, it doesn't matter who you love. Our programs are very inclusive. And we also, you notice on this slide, there's older people and younger people and children. We all can get smarter about our relationships. I've taken relationship education classes. I've voluntold my husband to take relationship skills classes with me. I give them away as wedding presents. So I'm a big fan, as you can tell, of relationship education. All righty, next slide. So here's the story of how I found out about these wonderful people. I was at a teen pregnancy prevention national grantee conference, and Katina, Taylor, and Gabby gave this amazing presentation. They're all out of Sacramento, which is, we're in California as well, about their unique approach to building trust with community organizations to increase their recruitment and retention of young people in relationship skills programs. Just a little bit about them, and ladies, you're welcome to come on. Taylor has been working in community-based organizations, schools, and governments for a long time. She's an associate director of Pro Youth and Families. She leads the network of community-based organizations in implementing TPP and youth development programs, and she has a master's in public health. So welcome, Taylor. Katina Watson, another thank you. We're both native Californians. She has worked in UCSS Birth Center, counseled, done counseling for office and other drug services. And then she, in 2021, saw the significance of preventative work, and she opened up her own program, Queens of Eve, specifically designed to support young women facing challenges like she grew up with. I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about that. And Gabby is a certified educator in an SRA curriculum. She loves helping young people with healthy relationships, family dynamics, and emotional well-being. She was a domestic violence safe house case manager and has a bachelor in sociology. So what a talented and multifaceted team. So I leave it to you. Oh, I know what I forgot to mention. Sorry, one more thing. So when they say on your control panel chat, they're joking. If you want to communicate with us, and I'll be monitoring this, please go to the question area if you have a question, and I'll ask the team your question. They will be holding polls. They might ask you to write in the question box. And there's some handouts that they've put in the control panel so that you can download. So sorry I didn't get that before. Okay, now I really mean it. Welcome, Taylor, Katina, and Gabby.
Thank you, Kay. I really appreciate it. All right. Thank you all for being here today to learn about building trust and using unique strategies for successful recruitment and retention. As Kay mentioned, I will be presenting with Katina and Gabby. Next slide, please. All right, you actually just got the whole bio that we were going to say, so we're going to skip over this. And I do want Katina to talk a little bit more about Queens of Eve, just because I think it's important to talk about. So go back one more. Oh, sorry, go. Oh, this is my bad. All right. Technical difficulties of mine. Okay, so Pro Youth and Families, Gabby and I both are from Pro Youth and Families. And so with this, we are a nonprofit organization here in Sacramento, California. And what we really do is we work with organizations, we work with direct service programming to uplift youth voices. So our core values are youth first, belonging, collaboration, and hope. And we really try to implement those into our everyday work. And so I have a little diagram here for you just to show the two different arms of Pro Youth and Families. Of course, it's much more complicated, but for this presentation, know that direct service program means that our pro staff goes into schools, organizations, and does direct facilitation. Whereas the Youth and Family Collective, or what I'll call the YFC, which is what I am a part of, we work with external partners to implement different programs. And now I'll pass it on to Katina.
Hello, welcome. My name is Katina Watson. As Kay said, I'm from San Francisco, born and raised. Moved to Sacramento in 2018. And then I became a youth AOD counselor. So that's a youth drug and alcohol counselor. Kind of decided that that wasn't really for me because the clients that I served at that point was forced to see me, right? They all said that they were going to go back to their drug of choice after. So I decided to do more of a preventative work. In that, I worked for Rose Family Creative Empowerment Center. And as a case manager working with young women, that's what inspired me more to create Queens of Eve, to work with the quote unquote at-risk youth. Next slide. Okay, so Queens of Eve was created or founded in 2021. The mission is to we're committed, to fostering a thriving community that prioritizes the mental health, integrates social and emotional learning for young women, and also promotes a positive self-concept that's so huge, especially now when we see all the insecurities that social media brings. So in our approach at Queens of Eve, we look to build relationship, right? Set boundaries, expectations, but then we also listen. We were an active listener for our youth. Next slide.
Perfect. Well, welcome everybody. So I'd like to just give us a briefing of the agenda that we have planned for you all today. So what our presentation is going to be broken down into is first we're going to cover group norms, and then we're going to dive into our learning objectives that we have for you all with our presentation that we're bringing to you all today. And we'll discuss different keys to successful recruitment and retention. We'll explain to you what the YFC is and what we do, our sole purpose. We'll talk about what it looks like to have successful partnerships, and then we'll dive into youth recruitment and retention, what that looks like, some tips and tricks, and then we'll close out with a good old-fashioned Q&A.
Great, thank you, Gabby. Okay, so group norms. This seems a little odd because we're on a webinar. I can't see anyone, but you know what? I love a good group norm, and it's good for the audience just to level set, right? So what I want to really encourage is a conscious conference room. And what that really means is bullets 2, 3, 4, and 5. I want you all to assume good intent with everything that we say. And everything that we say, every question that's asked, we're all here to learn and grow, and we're all at different levels in that. So let's just assume good intent, which means you should tackle problems, not people. Since we're online, this should not be an issue, hopefully. And with that, we also want to reserve the right to change our mind. we're going to talk about some things in maybe a way that is a little out of the box, and we hope that you're interested in learning more. And so we want you to stay curious and ask lots of questions. All right, thank you. Next slide. Great. So the first thing we're going to do before we really dive into everything is just, I have a couple poll questions that I would like you all to answer about recruitment and retention. The best part, no wrong answers. I truly just want you all to see what everyone else is thinking in this room and know that, one, you're not alone, and two, we're here to help maybe bring some solutions to the table. So if we can get that first poll. Give you all about 30 seconds. Oh, and I forgot to mention, if you click other, if you want to put your other answer in the Q&A, then we can see it. All right, interesting. So it looks like 78%, the most important is building relationships. I absolutely love that. Also, setting boundaries and expectations, providing incentives, and then listening and adapting is 2%. Yeah, I agree with all of these things, as you'll see as we go throughout this presentation. All right, let's hit the next poll. All right, it looks like highest was, I'm not sure, I haven't asked partners this question. Then we have no strong financial incentives, and other as the 17%. I'll be curious to know what those are. For the, I haven't asked partners this question. This is a great webinar to be a part of. We will talk all about what that looks like and how to include your partners in the process. Okay, this one is specifically on youth, so make sure you're thinking about the youth. Competition with other activities. Looks like programs lack relevancy, and other again. Awesome. All right. With time in mind, we'll skip the next one. But just keep in mind all of these answers that you've seen in regard to recruitment and retention. I think
Taylor, there's a couple people who added something in.
okay.
One was, so some people can't see the polls, and I am sorry. I don't know what, that I apologize for that, but I don't know what to do about it. To your second to the last question, someone wrote that the problem they were having was teaching teen pregnancy prevention within a conservative community. Another one said the last question was that young people have shorter attention spans. It's hard for really long programs. And another one said she chose other because both times because the answer is all of the above.
I love that. All the above answer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Kay. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we're definitely going to touch on all of these things. So I'm excited to talk more about this. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Alrighty, so now we have some learning objectives. So some learning objectives that we have is we want to identify 3 practical strategies to support partner recruitment and retention. We also want to identify 3 practical strategies to support youth recruitment as well as retention, and understand the importance of utilizing incentives and fair compensation for partners and youth for us to be able to drive successful recruitment and retention.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. So yeah, so with those learning objectives in mind, Gabby and Katina and I, we got together and we thought, what really is successful recruitment and retention? You have these numbers, but how did we get those numbers? We have great numbers and I love to brag about them. And so as we were thinking about it, we're like, well, let's think about it from the youth perspective and let's think about it from the partnerships perspective. And as we were doing this, we realized they're pretty much the same. Like youth and adults are much more similar than we give credit to, I believe. And so the main thing that we found is trust, right? It's the underlined one at the top. But how do you get to trust? And that would be through relationship building, setting boundaries and expectations, listening and adapting to, again, both youth and partners, and then incentives for participation. That one definitely both for youth and partners as well. And so this diagram is going to be in one of the handouts. I think it's called the one-pager handout. I was very literal in naming that. And so on that one-pager, you will have this diagram, and you might want to just keep it up so you can refer to it as we keep going on. So go to the next slide, please. Great. So we are going to start talking about all these things through the Youth and Family Collective here at Pro. And this initiative was created before I was on board. So I would like to show you all a video of our CEO and our Chief Collaboration Officer speaking about what it is.
Pro Youth and Family has been around for 42 years. We were founded because a community was really tired and overwhelmed by the gang and drug problems that were in their local park. About 500 people came together and said, we got to do something differently. 10 different committees were formed, and that became Pro Youth and Families. And we really always at the center of that was empowering young people to be the voice. They're the solution, not the problem. The Youth and Family Collective was started really with this idea that we needed to do things differently. The systems were broken and we weren't able to serve the number of young people that we needed to serve, and organizations were struggling. They were having a hard time getting funding. They were really competing with each other, and we didn't want to do that. How are we going to serve more young people instead of being a field that we're so limited in our funding sources? So we brought people together, we had conversations so that it could be a very organic process, and we started to build what is now the YFC.
In the past, a lot of collaboratives were driven by money. The collaborative process came before the actual benefit to youth in the community. And we realized that it had to be flipped. We had to put the youth first and then put a structure together to collaborate. And once we put those things together, it completely changed the game and it all started to make sense.
All right. Thank you for playing that video. That video gets me every time, it just makes me feel very inspired. But what I will say that's really important is that this video mentions how organizations, especially nonprofits, are often going for the same funding and working in silos. And so the Youth and Family Collective is really dedicated to deconstructing those nonprofit norms through collaborative impact. And we do this by getting bigger funding. So the Pro Youth and Families tries to pull down that bigger funding, those big complicated grants, whether they're federal, state, city, and then we pull them down so that we can funnel it into the community through a less burdensome process to smaller organizations. And when I mean smaller organizations, I mean a lot of our organizations that we work with are truly 1 to 2 people. And so again, those big grants are really hard to grab. And so working with those organizations, what does it mean to work collaboratively? Well, together, we work on project management and tool delegation. We try to create networks of support for both us and organizations. And then one of the biggest things I think is probably fair compensation and administrative burden reduction. And so let's get into what the YFC way, what that looks like. So as I mentioned, Pro receives that funding, and then we create a project that other folks can apply to. And so this model here looks very similar to most project management models. However, I think that the YFC team has been super creative in making it a collaborative process with other organizations. So before I go through the entire cycle, I just want to level set the components of a YFC project. And those components are, you have a curriculum portion of a project, you have a youth voice project, you have admin funding that the organization gets per youth, and then youth who participate in the program also get a youth stipend. And so this can be seen, for example, we have a project coming out called the Yes Project, Youth Engagement Squad, super amazing. And so what will happen is that organizations who are selected to participate in this will recruit youth, and then the number of youth that they will get paid for that youth, and then they will also provide a stipend to that youth at the end of the project. So if we go to the next slide, we can dive into what each of these steps look like. So once funding is received, we get to do the project creation piece. I love this. This is where you get innovative. And one thing that I would say is that the YFC team loves to do things as differently as possible for good or worse, you know, but it's always really fun. And the way that we incorporate partners in on this is through a variety of methods. And one example that I want to talk about is that recently we needed a new marijuana prevention curriculum because we were told by both youth and partners that it was very outdated and they were not interested in it. And so we thought, wow, we really need to change this. But if we selected it, then we wouldn't really know what our partners or youth wanted. So we created a curriculum innovation committee, and they went through and looked at 4 different curricula. They graded it, they discussed it, and then they actually chose which one we used for our next project. And that work collaboratively put youth voice first and also our organizations first, because they're the ones facilitating, right? I'm sitting in the back, so if it looks good to me, but our partners are like, there is nothing to work off of here, then that's not going to work. So I really appreciate our relationships that we have with those, with our partners, to be able to create projects together. All right, so once we create it, we'll go to the next slide and talk about the CBO selection process. So project is designed, we're ready to send out an RFP or a notice of funding opportunity. And, you know, we want to make it less complicated than what we had to do to get that big grant. So we're trying to simplify this process. You know, we have an application that they need to fill out, and then we also have them participate in an information session. You might be thinking, that sounds backwards. Why are you making them do more before the application is even due? I thought you were going to make it easier. But what we've actually found is that it ensures that our missions align and that we are setting the boundaries and expectations before the project even begins. And so that way we decrease the risk of accidentally wasting time for both organizations and for our team. And with that, you know, we've had some incredible projects and partners, but maybe our missions didn't align quite for this project, and that's okay. You know, they still do wonderful work, but it ended up setting us all back because we just weren't aligned from the beginning. So having that is super important. All right, then we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so now we have our project management piece. And so this is really where the administrative piece comes in handy. And so I was talking with our chief collaboration officer, and she said philosophical administration. And I thought that is a beautiful way to put what we do, because it's really kind of out there. We are looking at making sure every piece of the project fits for both the YFC and for whoever we are working with in order to uplift youth voice and youth wants and needs. And so we do this in a number of ways. We have our networking meetings every month. We have a monthly meeting and we talk about what we need to do, deliverables, all that good stuff. And then we also give folks a space to talk about what maybe is happening in their classrooms and how can they work things out with knowledge that other people in the group are also dealing with the same things. And through that, we do a lot of resource sharing as well. Again, another really important part of our projects is just that networking piece. And then, of course, we always, for training and technical assistance, we love one-on-ones. We love our relationship building. It's also probably where we get the best feedback because if you have a good relationship, you're going to get very real feedback. And we love that. Like that is exactly what we thrive off of. And so offering that at all times within reason, boundaries and expectations, of course. And so putting that out there, though, I think is a great way to build trust and transparency within our organization and our partnerships. So we'll go on to the next slide. So once our project is over, then we have our shared evaluation piece. And so this is definitely where some of that administrative burden also gets shifted from smaller organizations onto us. And so our partners do an amazing job of sending out surveys and evaluations to youth. The youth complete them, and then we do all of the back-end reporting, you know, in like grant solutions, all those big portals that are very complicated if you don't have like a degree in technology. So we try to take that off of them. And of course, we use that feedback to, you know, to move forward our next project. And so another thing that I will say about this is that we also use the data to have data parties now. This is a new thing, so we've only had a few, but it's been really cool to see what the youth think and how they talk to their partners. They just truly think the world of them. And so it's nice to be able to share that and then also give our partners give them reports that they can then use to get other grants, right? Data equals money a lot of times, as much as we hate to say it. All right, so let's go to the final stage, which is the project debrief. So while the shared evaluation piece is critical for reporting measures, we also want to debrief to improve our practices for future projects. And so as a team, we review partner and youth surveys, and we look for patterns, comments, concerns, anything that we might be able to do differently for the next time. And then we also have one-on-one meetings with each and every organization. And this is because, like I said earlier, you get folks one-on-one, you have a good relationship, they're going to tell you what needs to be different. And I think Katina is going to speak to a few things that we've done that, you know, we've improved greatly, I think, on some things, but there's always room for improvement. And so we might as well make it easier if we can. And so if we go to the next slide, we'll see how this has impacted us. So the impact is pretty incredible. We have partnered since 2020 with over 70 different organizations. We've distributed $6.5 million to youth and CBOs, or partners. And we've had 15 collaborative projects, reached almost 5,000 youth, and 100% of our partners said that they would work on another project with us. And we know that's true because 75% of those partners have engaged in 2 or more projects. And they also, you know, part of this is because the retention, you know, if they 100% said that they have more tools to help youth and they've developed a stronger network. So they want to come back because there's trust that they're going to be able to we're going to uplift them to be able to do the work that they do best. And I will let Katina talk a little bit more about this in the next slide.
Okay, so when we talk about mission alignment is key, right? We want to make sure that we have that strong partnership. Having a strong partnership, it feels like you have a strong foundation. When organizations align, collaboration is smoother, right? And I like to use the term authentic communication, like Taylor said, transparency. And although everything isn't always what we want to hear, I would rather know there's a hiccup than not know, right? So that's one of the things that Taylor was referring to when she spoke. But just making sure that our missions align is huge, and both of our missions being youth centered is important. When we go next to accountability, shared responsibilities, right, and then commitment, it ensures a strong impact, not only for me as a CBO and pro, but also for our youth. They know that they can rely on us, but only because we have a strong back end. So I appreciate pro a lot. And then the fair compensation is huge, right? The unrestricted funds allows me, I can speak for Queens of Eve. It allows us, so I do this thing called a swag bag. They get shirts, they get pins, they get their love note journals. So they get all of that things. But I was also able to bring on 4 youth ambassadors out of the funds with that. So when we're in session, they monitor for we're on Zoom, so they monitor to make sure that people are engaging and cameras are on. And if the cameras are off, they're sending a little message. So it's helping them get more of a leadership role, which is huge. And then we talk about, oh, that's it. Next slide. Okay.
All righty. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't see a switch on mine, so it's fine.
No worries. So now we're going to get into the 3 practical strategies to support partner recruitment and retention. So the 3 key things are, before starting a project or a partnership, we just want to make sure, like Katina said, that our mission and vision align. Secondly, we want to foster shared accountability through authentic communication, and that's huge. And so that reduces administrative burdens whenever possible. And lastly, provide and receive constructive feedback throughout our partnership. Adapt as necessary and reassess as needed. Next slide, please. Perfect. And here comes to my part. So again, I've been a program facilitator for about 2.5 years. So I get to have the opportunity to talk about working with all of you. So before we switch the slides, I'd like to just reiterate that here at Pro, we have 4 core values that we all live by. That's putting you first, belonging, collaboration, and hope. And I do truly believe that when we embody these values, we not only work towards building a connection and a relationship with the youth that we serve, but it also adds to the development of trust, which is huge. Now, if we can go to the next slide, please. Perfect. So, building relationships and establishing trust with the youth is crucial if we want to have a successful cohort. And I'm going to discuss how everything that you see on this slide contributes to that. So first, I want to acknowledge the time that we actually have as facilitators. So it's actually completely different than the everyday teacher. With the cohorts that I've actually facilitated, we meet once or twice a week, if we're lucky, for about an hour or so. But compared to the everyday teacher, we're extremely limited to the time that we have. And so that's why it's very important for us to be strategic with the time that we have with our youth. So let's go ahead and dive right into this diagram that we have here. So at the start of this diagram, you see trust listed at the bottom. Now, this kind of plays hand in hand with recruitment. So in the beginning, trust is very surface level. The youth are still trying to fill us out, see who we are, and if we can be a trusted adult in their life. So in the beginning, while we are recruiting, we're usually taking this time to tell them all of the details about our program and who we are. And we also kind of try to throw out the incentives in there in hopes that it catches their attention. So when delivering this message to our youth, I like to think of it as a very long mass email sent to us as adults. So we open up a message and we see paragraphs on paragraphs on paragraphs. So in our heads, we might just scan the email to find the key points or the meat of the message. Well, similar to that, our youth want us to be short, sweet, and just get right to the point. And so as we're recruiting, maybe a tabling event, we are explaining, this is our program, this is what we're teaching, we'll be here on these days at this times, we'll bring you snacks, and if you complete 75% of our program, you get a $75 gift card. And at the end, as a group, we collaboratively come up with a decision on maybe like a restaurant or a food place that we like to all eat from, and we get to celebrate all together. Now, most of the time, once they hear about that gift card, their ears are open and they are convinced and ready to join. So that's a good one because we get them in the door. However, youth will not just stay in the program for the food party at the end or the $75 that they get. They need to feel a connection with the group and the instructor and actually enjoy their time being a part of the group. And so where the incentive may get them in the door, it's literally you as the facilitator that is in charge of keeping them engaged. And it's the effort that we all put in, whether it's building big or small connections that really make a difference and keep them coming back. So now, moving along on our diagram, it comes to setting boundaries and expectations. So I find that it's really crucial to do this in the beginning, day 1 or day 2 at the latest. And how I like to go about this is creating classroom agreements. I don't really like to call them rules. I like to call them agreements. And I always preface with who usually makes the rules. Usually it's our parents, our caregivers, the elders, the teachers, whoever it may be. Well, I like to switch it up and allow them the space to come up with their own classroom agreements that not only I'm holding them accountable for, but they're holding me accountable for as well. So I give them the chance to go ahead and come up with a few on their own. I add some of mine if they haven't mentioned them already. And then I open the floor for discussion. Does anybody want to challenge any of the agreements that we came in, add any, dispute any, whatever it may be? And once we're all on the same page and can agree to those terms, then we keep the ball rolling. Now, I'd like to say that as leaders, it's our job to be consistent with these boundaries and these expectations. We must uphold them and keep all of our students, our participants, accountable for this as well. And we also want to bring boundaries and expectations in a positive light, as those could kind of be some heavy words for our youth. They might be familiar with the word boundaries and expectations, but they might still be navigating what are their own personal boundaries and how do they enforce them. So by bringing a positive light to these things, we're teaching them skills that will last a lifetime. So that's definitely something I think is important to keep in the back of our mind. And honestly, one key thing that I've learned as being a facilitator, the best thing that we can do is just be human with our youth. We all make mistakes. Sometimes our programming might not go exactly as planned, and that's okay, because showing them that we make mistakes too humanizes us. And I like to let them know that we're navigating through life for the first time as well as they are. Different ages, different paces, and different stages, but we're all just trying to figure it out too. And so by kind of just humanizing that and doing that allows them to acknowledge their own lived experiences and be kind of comfortable with sharing them with us. And that adds to the depth and the power of relationship building in my experience. And so we talked about a little bit listening and adapting, and I honestly think this is a really big part as well. And we'll be doing a lot of this with the different groups that we come across. Why? Because they are filled with different personalities. No one cohort that we've had is ever the same, and I'm sure other people feel the same way as well. And so we want to take the time as leaders to understand and get to know each of our students' uniqueness that they bring to our groups. We want to recognize their strengths and maybe even help them navigate through some challenges that they may be facing. We want to listen more and allow the youth to exercise their voice to explore their thoughts and their opinions together and with their peers. And if we're being honest, the youth nowadays are growing up in completely different times than we've all grown up in. And sometimes the things that they might say, we have absolutely no clue what they're talking about. But that's okay. That's why it's important for us to come with an open mind and just the willingness to listen. And that alone just makes them feel seen. The trust grows even deeper when we respond with validation, reassurance, and just giving them signs that we're actively listening to them. And again, that just plays that we don't only hear them, but we see them too. And we're putting in the efforts to understand their point of view and their perspective on life. Now heading towards collaboration, like I mentioned, it is one of our core values here at Pro, and just by implementing this in our groups, it can be powerful. There are some groups that collaboration does look different, and again, that's totally okay. We always want to meet our youth where they're at. Listen to them. We want to lead open discussions, but also encourage them to collaborate with each other when exploring their thoughts and their opinions, leaning on each other. We as adults are there to guide the conversations, redirect when needed, intervene when needed, but we want them to take the mic. We want them to do more of the talking so that way they can explore their own thoughts. And as we've all probably experienced, sometimes we just have to say things out loud and then it starts to make sense for us. And so once, that all happens, during this time, we kind of are approaching the end of our programming, and this is when we get to celebrate our youth, which is my favorite part. Especially bringing food to the group of their choice. They always get so excited. Usually they skip lunch because they're just ready to get their grub on. And I think that breaking bread with our youth is so powerful, especially when they want you to be included in that moment with them. I'd like to just share a quick story. One of my cohorts that is always near and dear to my heart, I'll remember these ladies forever. A group of about 5 or 6 young ladies, 7th and 8th grade, and we just got so close. I always was like, I'm their auntie or their big cousin or their big sister, and just the conversations that we had were so powerful. At Pro Youth, we had gotten these beautiful leather journals, and I grabbed one for each of my girls, and I wrote them a personal message. And it was a beautiful moment for me, just being able to reflect on how I interpreted their own personalities and their uniqueness, and just wrote a little letter catered to them. Will they open their journals again? I don't know. Will they use those journals? No idea. But I got to see the moment of them opening those journals and reading the message I wrote. And it was just a moment that all of us shared together. Hugs and I love you, Miss Gabby. And, it was just a moment that I will always remember. I had a couple of the girls retake my class and bring some of their friends. And that just leads into retention. So when we have those powerful moments, they bring their friends, they repeat our class, and it just really builds and goes full circle. All right, so now, as you can see, I'm not sure if you noticed, but trust is written twice on this diagram. Why is it listed twice, you might wonder? It's because they're so different. The trust in the beginning is so much deeper than it is at the end. And even if it's just a small amount of change, it's still changed. The depth has been there, it's been built on and established, and so you're able to look back from day 1 versus maybe week 12 or 13 and just reflect on the growth of the group, big or small. And I really believe that by applying everything that we've discussed, you're building trust, you're building on that relationship. By setting expectations, enforcing those boundaries, encouraging collaboration, it helps boost their confidence, which improves their social and communication skills, which also leads to the success of their own in their own lives, like academically or even personally. And like I said, I've been doing this for 2.5 years. I can comfortably say that not all of my groups were perfect. I've had my fair share of struggling moments, but I still just learn, like, as long as I'm honest with them, we still find a way to come together, even if it looks different. Some of my groups, I felt that towards the end, none of them connected with me. But once the group was over, they would tell us how much the group meant to them, and I would be like, are you sure? And they really would grasp the information, but it just shows that you never know. They might look at blank faces, but inside their brains are tinkering, they're thinking. And so how they just show it is a little bit different. And I just want to end this slide, which is saying, like, we won't have 100% successes with all of our groups, but as long as we make sure that we give 100% each time, we're doing all that we can for our youth. I always say our babies, our future. So that's the diagram. If we can go ahead and switch to the next slide. And when we're switching to this next slide, I'd just like for you guys to take a moment to look at these responses that we've gotten. When we implement all of these things, this is what our results look like. 91% reported that it's important to them to be able to recognize who a trusted adult is in their life. 88% agreed that the facilitators seem to actually care about the participants in the group. And 89% also felt more confident that they can advocate and speak up for themselves on issues that are important to them. So I think these responses are huge and speak for themselves. If we can go ahead to the next slide, I think for the time's sake, we're going to go ahead and skip that video. So go ahead and skip that slide as well, please. And I'll go ahead and pass it to you, Katina.
Okay, so when we go through recruitment at Queens of Eve, it's mainly fueled by social media, but like Gabby said, also word of mouth, right? You have youth that go through the program and they're loving it and they're telling their friends about it and they want to join and they also want their friends to join. So that's mainly how we recruit. Majority is word of mouth more than social media. After that, we do take them through an orientation. The orientation is so they can know what to expect. We go through the Love Notes curriculum, but we also create our group norms. And then I do throw in a couple of non-negotiables that they may not mention. And then through our sessions, we hold our sessions twice a week because the youth that we serve, they're more like the popcorn generation, like they want it now. So we do it quick, 2 weeks, 2-hour sessions each week. And then the impact, and I'll speak to Love Notes specifically because I didn't realize how much the youth would take, like they take to it. When you have a bunch of youth in a room and they're comfortable, they feel trusted, they feel like this is a safe space for them to be authentically them, and they're getting curriculum that hits home when it comes to building relationships, when it comes to consent, right? I had a youth in my cohort, my most recent cohort, after watching the consent video, she told me that she was sexually assaulted, right? And if she would have known or had this information before, she may have went about stuff a little different. So Love Notes is it's really, 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 really it's up here, right? I honestly feel like it should be a class that's being taught in schools because our babies aren't getting it. So that's it. And my numbers, thank you, Taylor, for the slide. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll brag for Katina for a second. Katina's completion rate is unreal. I know you're mad about the 87, but I'm pretty sure people would pay a lot of money to have 80% completion and retention rate. So I do want a big shout out for that. And a lot of that is really just your relationships with those youth. So thank you for the work that you do. All right, we're gonna go to the next slide. Run through it real quick.
Perfect. Yeah. And so just to kind of sum it up, we want to just talk about the 3 practical strategies again. 1, foster authentic relationships through vulnerability and relatability. Big on relationship building. 2, create a positive and safe environment just by normalizing positivity and self-reflection. And lastly, offer a space for youth to provide feedback. Adapt as you see it fit to show youth that their voice matters. Give the youth feedback through an empathetic lens. And I always say be open to feedback too. So that can, reverse the roles a little bit. Go ahead and change the next slide, please.
Yeah, so everything that all 3 of us talked about boils down to trust, relationship building, boundaries and expectations, listening and adapting, and using those incentives and fair participation for that successful recruitment and retention. And, we talk about all this, but I really feel like the next slide and video shows the impact of what this actually means.
Like you could talk about anything, and it's really like a judge-free center, and it's really nice.
I guess I start coming out of that shell and just start talking to more people, start being shy, and just started being myself around people.
With mommy here, I could talk more openly with her, and she understands us.
They understand the youth need help. They need guidance, they need direction, but it has to be from individuals that they trust, because we know our youth, and that's one thing the YFC understands.
I'm ready, Niece. You come to tell them. I sound, let's go.
When I say I care for you, you believe me, love. There was one thing you believe me, love. It's really care for you, you believe me, love. You believe me, love.
All right. Thank you all for watching that. Okay, I know we're a little over time, so I appreciate that. If there are any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to us. We are always happy to meet, talk about, different, just how to approach this, how to collaborate well and together. And yeah, reach out to any of us. We're always happy to chat. So thank you again for joining this webinar. And thank you, Kay, for having us.
Awesome work, Pro Youth and Families in Queen of Eve. So thank you all for coming today. Kim, the next slide. Next month on this, oh, I know. So in a few days, you'll get an email and we will have posted this onto our website along with all the handouts so you can share it with others in your community or look at it yourself. And of course, we have our email here, Relationship Skills. Will there be a certificate provided? I believe there's a certificate that will come with your follow-up email from us that you can download and fill out, or maybe it's filled out already, but yeah, you'll get a certificate. And if you don't, just let us know. Okay, next slide. So next month, so we're having a webinar for federal grant writing strategies. It's probably most any kind of grant writing strategy, and especially in these times, it's good to have state grants and local grants as well. So Erin Larson, who was our director of programs and who also has been a federal grant reviewer, can give you a lot of insights in how to write. And so if you're an accomplished grant writer, you may not need this, but if you're like a brand new to this field or to this work, we encourage you to sign up. So just, you'll be getting an invitation or go to our website. So I think that's it. No other questions. So we're going to give this an early wrap. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Katina. Thank you, Gabby. I know why the kids of Sacramento love you guys. You're amazing. So thank you, and we'll see you all next month. Take care.